This comes to us from Blog Club Chicago, and this broke today. It came from Justin Lawrence, and I'm actually kind of fresh to the story. I didn't get a chance to completely review it, so I'm going to be learning as we go along what happened today. So Aldermen slam Lightfoot's pick for police oversight boss after tone-deaf report on slain officer Ella French. The Civilian Office of Police Accountability recommended discipline for French stemming from the botched raid at Ann Jeanette Young's home. Oh, this is the story where the police went into that home and Ann Jeanette was not dressed and they were in the wrong home and they completely traumatized her. And it came out later that Officer French was the only officer that actually showed some compassion and took care of this woman after the police lamely apologized and left and didn't do anything to correct the situation. And I believe Anna Young had to file for freedom of information to get that video out so people knew what happened. And of course, she was stonewalled by the city because you'd never want to know that the police made that kind of a mistake. The report was finished in April, getting back to our story, months before French was killed, but released to the public last week. 20 Alder people have opposed Mayor Lori Lightfoot's choice to lead the Civilian Office of Police Accountability after the agency recommended discipline for slain officer Ella French in a report about the wrongful raid on Ann Jeanette Young's home in 2019. Lightfoot nominated Andrea Kirsten as COPA's chief administrator Tuesday, a position Kirsten has held on an interim basis since Sidney Roberts left in the spring. Kirsten's appointment must be confirmed by a majority of the 50-member city council. Last week, COPA released its findings into the raid, in which body cameras showed a terrified Young, handcuffed and naked. While she pleads with officers, they were searching the wrong home. The report singled out French as the only officer who treated Young with dignity during the ordeal. Still, COPA recommended a suspension of French because of other policy violations. That suggestion is moot since French, 29, was murdered in a traffic stop in August. The report was finalized in April, months before French was killed. It could not be released publicly until after Police Superintendent David Brown reviewed the punishments recommended by the agency. Then charges against the officers were filed with the Chicago Police Board. The inclusion of French outraged her family, supporters, and local officials. Before Lightfoot's announcement, 20 council members publicly blasted the nomination, saying in a letter to the mayor they were dismayed, disheartened, and outraged about the report, and that Kirsten does not have what it takes to be at the helm of COPA, as demonstrated by her release of this report. Okay, I'm going to take a pause here. Are we supposed to just whitewash and hide the details of a report after someone has tragically passed? We all know that Officer French was a good officer. Okay, so she made a mistake in the field and didn't have her camera on. There were other cameras that caught what was going on. Why should that be whitewashed from the report? I don't agree that there should be any disparagement of Officer French, especially now that she's no longer with us. And this is all kind of like kind of a moot point anyway. So on one hand, I understand why the city council is upset that Kirsten decided to include this in the report, given the tragic circumstances surrounding Officer French's death, killing. But it also leads me to speculate and wonder if the city council wants stuff whitewashed for their own reasons. What would prevent anybody from whitewashing other things in other reports? That's not consistent. And at this point, again, it's a moot point. I don't really know that it matters. It seems more politically motivated for whatever agendas. Hey, Oreo. The letter also references Lightfoot's own comment last week. The report was the height of tone deafness, but does not mention the investigation concluded months before French died. Morale is low, tensions are running high, and COPA releases a report tainting the legacy of fallen Officer French and recommending disciplinary action against her. Again, this came before she was killed. And despite the fact she did show compassion towards Ann Jeanette Young, and we're all grateful that she demonstrated how police officers should behave, she screwed up and didn't wear her camera. And this report came before things happened. So why would you want to? I don't understand what the city council people are carrying on about here. All this report does. Oh, I see what it does. All this report does is further alienate our Chicago police officers at a time when it is imperative that we begin rebuilding their trust in this administration and in the people who are supposed to have their backs, i.e., turn a blind eye to all of the misconduct, all of the civil rights violations, all of the killings that cameras don't cover. when led by a clown that we covered earlier, like John Catanzara. All right, so here are the aldermen who signed this letter: Nicholas Sposato of the 38th, Savannah Tabares of the 23rd, Brian Hoppins of the 2nd, Susan Sedlowski Garza of the 10th, of course, Patrick Daley Thompson, who of the 11th, who himself should already be in jail. He's already under federal investigation for tax evasion, and he still has the what do they call it? The chutzpah to be serving in city council when he should just resign and let someone else take care of the business he has to be taken care of in his warrant. George Cardenas, sorry I'm editorializing, but this shit just pisses me off. Marty Quinn of the 13th, Ed Burke, the other boss of city council. David Moore, yes, David Moore, who wasted millions of dollars to rename Lakeshore Drive. Matthew O'Shea of the 19th, Jeanette Taylor, Ariel Reborius, Felix Cardana, Gilbert Villegas, Emma Mitz, Samantha Nugent, Andre Vasquez, Anthony Napolitano, Brendan Rowley, and James Gardner. COPA is aware of the letter and looks forward to Interim Chief Administrator Kirsten's chance to speak before the Public Safety Committee and City Council in hopes more clarity can be provided, spokesperson Ephraim Aedy said. It sounds like Oreos running a marathon back here. Lightfoot's office has not responded to a request for comment about the letter. French was not one of the officers who took part in serving the search warrant. So that there's a big factor there as well. She wasn't there when it happened. She came after. Instead, she and a few other officers arrived afterward to provide security, according to the report. She and other officers stopped and searched a man who had been parked behind Young's home, then went inside when they learned he was not involved in the investigation. French offered to take Young, who had been handcuffed naked for about 10 minutes, to a discreet area so she could get dressed, which a sergeant approved. French took Young to a bedroom and took off her handcuffs, allowing Young to put on clothes, according to the report. COPA recommended discipline up to termination for a sergeant and 2 officers involved in the raid. 5 others, including French, were recommended for shorter suspensions. The report recommended French be given a 3-day suspension for failing to activate her body-worn camera in a timely manner and not properly submitting an investigatory stop report related after she and the other officers briefly detained a man outside Young's home. That's completely fair. It doesn't disparage her legacy as a good officer. She screwed up. If anything, I think the 3-day suspension was probably a reminder of the importance to her and other officers that they had to be conscious of that regularly. After French was killed, Young publicly praised her for her conduct during the raid. Officer French assisted Miss Young and allowed her to get dressed in the privacy of her bedroom, a spokesperson for Young said in a statement. Officer French was the only officer who showed Miss Young any dignity or respect on the night of the raid. Miss Young is praying for Officer French's family and offers her sincerest condolences to them and all of Officer French's friends and colleagues. Great. None of this report that's saying that she forgot to turn on her camera takes away from any of that. These are 2 separate issues, and that these aldermen are politicizing it. I'm sure to score points. I'm seeing a lot of villains, our regular villains like Gardner and Burke and Daley and what's the other guy's name? Sposato. And then I'm seeing a progressive like Andre Vasquez, who, sorry, I'm going to say it, I think he engages a lot in identity politics. And I think that this is, probably a score for that too. James Gardner's, All right, let me go down to the article. Young is a pending lawsuit against the city, police department, and officers involved in the raid. In a statement announcing the nomination, Lightfoot praised Kirsten as a dedicated public servant with a lifetime of relevant experience and subject matter expertise and apparently attention to details, and singled out her efforts in completing the backlog of open cases COPA inherited from the agency's predecessor, the Independent Police Review Authority. At a time when independent and civilian-led police accountability have never been more important, I have the utmost confidence in Andrea's ability to lead COPA with transparency, integrity, and dedication to the office's important role, Lightfoot said. Kirsten previously served as Assistant State's Attorney, Administrative Law Judge, and as a staff attorney with IPRA. Police reform, specifically civilian oversight, is one of the more critical issues of our time and of significant importance To all residents of our city, civilian and sworn, Kirsten said in a statement. If confirmed, I will continue to serve guided by the consent decree, city ordinance, and uphold COPA's core values, integrity, transparency, independence, and timeliness. Kirsten's nomination also comes in advance of the mayor's office being stripped of the power to appoint COPA's leader. That task eventually will fall to the newly created civilian-led Police Oversight Commission. Okay, so Kirsten's under fire because they disciplined Officer French before she was killed, and the fact that this is coming out now has got all these older people's panties in a bunch. Tough shit. You can't cover stuff up. That's my opinion. What do you guys think? I'm going to go into the live chat here now, and like to share what some of you all think. I'm going to scroll back here. Let's see here. Okay, love Tagore. Thank you. I see that comment. I'm not going to put it up, but that's very flattering. Thank you. Okay, so Art Medina. Officer French was disciplined for not having her body cam on when she was at the raid, which is ironic because they didn't discipline the cops that made the raid. Wow. Whew. Thank you, Art. Good point. Very good point. No matter what reports are issued by the CPD or the city or COPA about this matter, it will never make anything better over what happened. This will happen again because it is what happens in Chicago. Art, when can I send you a StreamYard link so you can come on and co-host the show with me? Because you make a lot of good points. I would love for you to share in person. And it looks like that's the remainder of the comments regarding this particular story. True Democracy Now! Just chimed in. The behavior of our police is directly related to those elected that pay their salaries and the lawsuits. Absolutely. Okay.